Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's the December 9th, 1 p.m. meeting of the Concord Select Board. I see we have 4 members. Is Cam online?
No, he was going to try to be here,
Okay.
so he might be just a few minutes late.
We'll just observe that everybody except Mr. McKinnon is present. And we'll begin with public comments. We're going to take just 15 minutes for that. And please introduce yourself. Try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. And approach a microphone so that you can be heard online if you wish to make a public comment. Is there anyone that raise your hand if you're online? Okay, great. I think that then, I don't have anything from the chair's reports, and considering you heard from me last night already. Carrie, do you have anything you want to cover from town manager's report?
I do not, under town manager's report.
Okay. All right. Well, then we might as well dive right in. The main item of business today is a presentation on the FY27 budget. This will be a look at the town budget and an opportunity for us on the select board to both understand what the options are and understand the positioning relative to the Finance Committee's preliminary guidelines. So, Carrie, why don't you?
Okay, thank you. And I wanted to start by taking this opportunity to have the staff present in our audience introduce themselves, because I'm not sure that everybody on the board knows all of the members of the town staff. So I'm wondering, Assistant Chief, if I could start with you, and we'll just go around the room.
Assistant Chief Walter Latta, Concord Fire.
Nice to see you, Walter.
Fire Chief Woody, Concord Fire. Brian Coleman, Police Department Captain.
Yeah.
Steven Johnson, I'm the Emergency Communications Center Manager.
Oh, good.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'm Matt, Terry's assistant.
Hi, Matt.
Zach Lamar, senior financial analyst.
Hi, Zach.
Jeff Miner, CIO.
Hi, Jeff. Nice to meet you.
Emily Smith, Library Director.
Great.
Hi, Emily.
Megan Schmidt, Deputy
Okay, we know.
Hi, Jeff.
Miss Jennifer.
Yeah, Jennifer. And
Okay, and,
Alan Kelly.
yeah. Okay.
right on time.
And Ryan.
And
All
Ryan
right.
Farrell.
yes.
Great. So it's
Well-
great to see you all. You know, I don't get a chance to do this in person. Thank you for what you do. I know what kind of a job it is, and I really appreciate your efforts every day. It really shows up in this community, and we don't get enough chance to say thank you.
And I know we have some additional staff members that are participating in the remote audience. I did want to kick off with just some opening comments, and because we had a late evening last night, I wrote them out because I wanted to make sure to make all of these points, so I'm going to read my opening comments and apologies in advance. So thank you for taking the time for this additional budget meeting. The session provides an important opportunity to update you on the progress towards meeting the Finance Committee's preliminary fiscal 27 budget guideline in advance of the finance team's check-in with FinCom on Thursday. As you know, budget development is an iterative and often complex process. Much of the work occurs internally, but we also bring forward status updates in public settings like this one to invite board input and to allow the community to react and respond. What we are presenting today represents ideas and scenarios under active consideration and not a final plan, and the fiscal 27 budget recommendation is still under active review. Because you are a public body and we consult with you as we work through this budget development, we do so in open session. This means that the process can appear messy at times. Not every scenario we discuss will ultimately be included in the town manager's recommended budget, but many are explored, vetted, and stress-tested in open session. It is important for everyone to view these discussions in that context, and we are working through the process and not presenting final recommendations just yet. In that spirit of transparency, I want to clarify a point I made at our last discussion. I've been asked to clean up comments I made around the financial impact of public demonstrations. My intent was to highlight two separate and unrelated issues to illustrate the limits of traditional line item budgeting. The first, the challenge of unplanned public safety expenses, and second, the need to evaluate a range of service level adjustments to close the fiscal '27 gap. I noted that the town has incurred approximately $15,000 in unbudgeted public safety overtime related to several public demonstrations this year. That statement was intended solely as an example of unanticipated costs that contribute to overall fiscal pressures. I acknowledge that I referenced the Thursday demonstrations without also noting the larger events that drove the majority of those costs. Separately, and not intended to be directly connected to that point, I mentioned Sunday library hours as a potential service level adjustment when in fact a range of options are currently under review. My intention was not to link these two items or imply that peaceful standouts are a problem for the town. Rather, I was emphasizing the broader reality that unexpected expenses and evolving service demands both play a role in municipal budgeting. With that context in place, the purpose of today's session is to share where we currently stand relative to the Finance Committee's fiscal '27 budget guideline, and to understand the Select Board's level of comfort with where we are at this point in time. Your feedback today will inform the update to FinCom later this week, and will guide the refinement work that we will continue over the coming weeks prior to presenting the town manager's recommended budget to you next month. I'll now turn it over to the finance team to walk through the status update. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Okay, so just a quick overview of what we're going to be reviewing today. We're going to provide you with an update on the fiscal year 2027 budget, where we currently are in the process. You'll notice the term draft is going to be in most of these slides, as Carrie had mentioned before. This is evolving. We're looking for your input and feedback as we come and refine the final version of that document. We're going to talk a little bit about indirect costs. We've got some of our staff that are going to be presenting an update on that. We just went through this process and updated a few things on this that we'll be looking forward to giving you an update on. We're going to talk a little bit about public safety benchmarks too, and where the town comes in compared to some of our comparable communities, but also what makes us unique. And finally, we're going to have Stephen Johnson provide us with an update on dispatch opportunities. So some opportunities there to potentially look at regionalizations and some change in our practices there. So some of this we talked a little bit about last night. From your last meeting on November 17th, we provided an update that the current Finance Committee preliminary guideline to the town is to come back with a budget of a 2.5% increase. And then our update to you on November 17th, your November 17th meeting, was that we're currently at at that point, we're at 3.25.
So just to clarify, that's not our target.
So the Finance Committee target was 2.5%, right? And then we were, at that point, the last update that we gave you, we were at 3.25.
I know, it just says 3.25 target, but, so just to clarify, that's...
Yeah. So in terms of where we are today and the update we provided last night, we're currently at 2.95%. Some of the two primary ways that we had reached that target was accounting for, under a Council on Aging, we receive monies from the state that we can apply against some of our salaries. So we're taking more advantage of that this year, as well as some other FTE changes that we'll go over from this. So in terms of what the value of this 0.3 change is, it's about $107,000, or roughly the equivalent of a penny in the tax rate, or $20 per the average household bill. So I know we talked a little bit about wanting to see more of this at our meeting last night, about wanting to see more of this and knowing what the actual impact is on households. And so we wanted to be able to provide that to you. In terms of staffing, where we are today is basically there's no change in our FTE count from FY '26 to our proposed FY '27 budget, and we'll give you just a sort of a quick overview of that. Let's see.
So, sorry, but in the last meeting, I thought there was 2 positions being proposed to be
So let's,
added.
yeah, so I can fast forward to that. We're gonna come back to it a little later, but I wanted to just show what that would be. So I'm sorry, what this basically is right now is the FY '27 budget. We had kind of gone back and forth about different positions, and right now when we're coming in, the first thing we're taking away is our risk management position that's currently budgeted in FY '26, and we're not proposing that to move forward in FY '27. So that position is going away. We're proposing for it to go away. And then after significant discussion with our public safety team we were looking at the option of potentially putting in a deputy police chief slot, other changes to the management of the police department. We made a determination that we could put forward the business manager for all of public safety. So the thinking there is that benefits both police, fire, and dispatch. So right now, that we lose one position, we bring in one position. So that's really the focus of where we are right now in terms of total FTE count. And what we have had other proposals and other thoughts about positions at this point, but right now, the only new position is going to be, that we're proposing to move forward with, is the public safety business manager slot.
So we're not including the deputy police chief that we have talked about previously, not including the IT knowledge manager that we've talked about previously. At one point, we talked about some additional support in public records, and we presented that in terms of a position. Right now, we have some funds set aside, not specifically for a position, and we're actually hoping that we can find a way to facilitate that work without adding any FTE, even a part-time person. We're hoping for a tech solution to help facilitate that.
Excuse me, 3.25% change. That did not include the deputy police chief
The
or the IT?
3.25 did.
It did.
All the,
So
It did.
so the reduction from 3.25 to 2.95, you had on the slide.
That's the 40, it netted to 40,000. All those changes, Paul, netted to 40. So that's what that,
So
there were a
that's-
lot of, there were a lot
So
of.
that's a net. That's not
So
one position.
Correct.
We had, when we were proposing the deputy police chief, we had removed a police officer position. We were exchanging, so it would be a higher dollar value, but we were exchanging.
So
Okay.
I guess, yeah, it's still a little confusing that we had a proposal that had a police chief, additional senior police person, and an IT manager. We took them out, but we're only saving $40,000. I guess that's a little hard to follow. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just trying to.
Let me gauge where we're going with this.
Right.
I assume that you have a presentation that identifies what the changes are from the last time to this one. And I'm going to suggest that maybe we should, note our questions and then roll back through there so we can kind of get the whole picture of what the message is. At this stage, remember, we're talking about a response to the preliminary guideline of the Finance Committee, which is just that, it's preliminary. There's going to be a discussion at the Finance Committee on Thursday night about what their final guideline is going to be. And so at this stage, there's some opportunity for some changes in different priorities, which can show up in different departments, have to be weighed across the entire organization in order to come up with a proposal. So I'm going to just suggest that we let Ryan get to a natural stopping point, and then maybe we'll have enough background then to sort of figure out where we want to. Thank you.
And just to add one other thing to Carrie, that Carrie mentioned too, that we had at one point in the 3.25, there was money for a ranger, part-time ranger position, and that is coming out as well in the current version. So with this, I want to turn this over to Matt and Zach. We're going to talk a little bit about a project we've been working on to update our indirect charges. So we charge, town charges fees to our enterprise funds and our revolving funds for support for all of the staffing that goes, that is supported by the tax rate. So, but that methodology hadn't been updated in a while, so with that, we had tasked Matt and Zach to update this, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt and Zach to provide their update on where things stand. So I'll hit this, I'll tell you what, you guys sit here.
Thank you for this opportunity to go over this. Matt's going to start off with the methodology and how we came to what we did. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present. Carrie had asked Zach and I to rebuild the town's indirect cost allocation model. The prior version was from 2020, and it no longer accurately reflected current staffing, operations, or budget realities. The FY27 budget process requires a current and accurate model. We use a direct allocation method, which assigns overhead only where measurable support occurs. This keeps the model aligned with accurate service delivery, not assumptions. Each enterprise fund is charged a proportional share of the support it receives from HR, finance, IT, facilities, and the town manager's office. The outcome is a model that is fair, transparent, and defensible, and integrates cleanly into the FY27 budget. We designed this approach for FY27 and future years, with annual updates built into the process so the model continues to reflect organizational changes. We identified only departments that provide direct support services to enterprise or revolving funds, ensuring that overhead charges remain accurately scoped. For each support department, we developed the total cost of service by combining salaries, benefits, retirement, and operating expenses, creating a clear and complete overhead cost pool. Allocations are based on proportional workload and service levels, ensuring that indirect charges accurately reflect actual operational demand.
So I want to start off by showing the draft transfer summary. It's part of the Excel file that we use to do this. The transfer summary shows across the top columns there, you have your enterprise and revolving funds. Along the rows, you have the individual departments or services that are offered. Along the bottom, you have your FY27 enterprise total. It brings the total of what's being charged and can compare it to the FY26 right below it. And then it gives you the variances. As you can see, not every fund is increasing. Some may be decreasing. Again, we want to do this in a fair way where we're analyzing the actual support that's offered and services that's used. Also, just want to point out the introduction of the stormwater fund, which hasn't been in there previously.
So just for folks watching at home, the department that's transferring funds out is in the column.
Right.
And the rows are the department that's receiving the transfer in this
Correct.
table. Okay.
So this is an example of the charts that we use to get those totals. So the one that I'm showing here is treasurer collector. As Matt had mentioned, we have town manager's office, we have the finance department, highway and grounds, and others as well. So we have the salary plus the overhead, which is our benefits cost, the portion that the town is responsible for to bring the total. And then we use the percentage to take, the amount of time, services that are given in support to the enterprise fund by these divisions, and then the total that's being charged back in the form of an indirect cost.
So Zach, can you just clarify? So in this example, Deputy Treasurer, 3% of the cost is allocated to all enterprise funds or a particular one?
No, so these are, each fund has its own sheet, right?
Okay, that's what I was trying to
yeah,
figure out, because it just
so-
says enterprise, so it's just a
Right, so
single.
it's just an
enterprise.
example of one of them.
Right.
And each sheet has multiple of these
Right.
that are the different departments. So it's tailored to the individual fund itself, the individual enterprise revolving fund, and it's not uniform across the board. We also have, oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
So it varies by position, and then it looks like you've got other costs, so that utility lockbox
Yep, so there's
is a
other,
direct
other
cost.
services, so utility lockbox,
Yep.
that one, so those costs are, you know, to capture not what's only the personnel, but also the other services that incur costs. They're not all uniform across, so utility lockbox, light is being charged for that, water, sewer, stormwater, but you won't see it in BD, or you won't see it in rec. So that's just one example of,
Yep.
you know, it's not the same percentage across everybody. It's tailored to, you know, the services that are actually being provided.
So Zach, on the previous slide, if I look to the totals, departmental totals on the right, is that a complete, is that the total allocation of all overhead? I'm just wondering how much of the overhead is actually
Transfer.
allocated? Is that
Yeah,
complete?
that's a total at the end.
So
That's-
all overhead is allocated in this formula?
All costs.
So,
Yeah, for finance, for all the enterprises, that would be the total over there at the end on the right.
Right, so if I look at the totals, you know, year over year, is the correct interpretation that overhead costs have increased 60,000, for example? Because is this the totals? If I'm looking at the
This is the
bottom right.
total of the indirect
Transfer.
that's
The
being
indirect
charged
cost.
back. Also, yeah, what's being charged back. So we have another sheet that calculates the benefits and how we came up with that percentage, going over the health insurance, the retirement,
So my
dental,
question
vision.
is everything charged back? I mean, you said
So
services.
the percentage will be. So say, say we're charging 2% of Jennifer's time to a certain enterprise revolving fund, 2% of the salary, and then the 2% of that overhead.
But
total
100% of
together.
Jennifer's time is allocated.
No.
No,
No.
no, just the,
Only what adds up
Only
as the
what's,
total. But not, so like 100% of Jennifer's time is not allocated to revolving or enterprise funds. So only the amount that's being used.
services
towards that.
provided.
Correct.
30% of her
Yeah.
time annually is used
Right.
towards that enterprise.
So
That's how-
30%.
And do you have a list of the services provided? I mean, just, so-
Of the individual services or?
yeah, I'm just
or
trying,
by
when you say
person,
you're
what
allocating
their-
services, how do you define those?
That's kind of where we're gonna have to dive into. We now have the base model for this, but coming up to those actual percentages, it's gonna be
Yeah,
method that
Right.
we have to, you know, get to on that part of it, but we have to look at the workload and what, you know, actually
I'm
was
just sort of
contributed
asking a
to that enterprise.
definition. Like,
Correct.
when you say allocation of services, what does that really mean?
It's the time, right? So it's going to depend by who it is. So if we look back at,
Time devoted to that enterprise? Time
Correct.
devoted to that
yep, so
department?
if we look back at treasurer
Got it.
collector, right, you have the senior
Okay.
finance specialist. They process the checks that come in
Okay.
for the different services. So
Yeah.
if they take in the water bill and
Okay.
or the checks that come in for the water bill and they process it,
Okay.
that's what we're
So it's a
taking
time,
as their
you're
time
converting
to-
services into time. I got
Right,
it. Got it.
yes, yep, or they're, you know, they manage the utility lockbox, right? So that isn't something that's directly to the water or to the sewer, but they're managing the account that they
Yeah.
utilize,
Got it.
right? So, you know, that's how we're trying to
Understood.
do it.
so while you said you had to refine it, obviously to even get here, to get 3% or any of those 2%, you've had this conversation, managers have been involved to sort of look at what's the support been. So because you've refined it, right? You
Yeah.
did it differently last year, so now you've sort of got it working. And then every year, because the business changes,
Right.
you'll have to refine it, right?
So we've
But right now, it sounds like it's pretty good.
We built a master sheet, so we can kind of plug and play with numbers.
By person, by enterprise,
Exactly.
yeah,
So
okay.
it's something we can kind of transfer from year
Direct,
to year.
indirect.
As just a
Okay.
good base to have for
All
a
right.
model.
And
Makes sense.
everything ties together back and
Mary,
One walk.
you have
I got
another
a-
sheet. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm interrupting, go ahead.
Mary,
Thank you for doing this. We've been looking for this for a few years, so thank you for taking this deeper dive. I really appreciate it. The way I understand it is we're taking some support services that are now paid by the general fund, and we're transferring those out to departments that charge by user fees, right?
So these have been captured in the past.
Yep.
It's not new that we're doing the
No, I
direct
understand.
charges, yeah.
Yeah.
We're just trying to get in a way that we can understand why the amount is what it is, and we can easily replicate it from year to year to make the adjustments that are necessary, so it's more accurate, it's easier on our finance end, and easier as well on the enterprise and revolving funds to understand why they're being charged what they are.
I understand. So let me get to my question. My question is, so there's $4.2 million that's being charged out to these various funds that pass it on through user fees, right? And if I'm the Beatty Center and I see I've got $134,000 more this year that I have to pay, what mechanisms are available to the Beatty Center to reduce that number? Or is this just a charge they get in other words, how do we manage these expenses? So the Beatty Center is getting, like I said, $134,000 more than they did, right, in the past years. And we all know that the Beatty Center has a tight budget. So what's available to them to manage that number?
So it's definitely something that the numbers that we have in here right now, they were internally discussed between Matt and myself, with some oversight as well by Ryan and Jennifer and Kerry. And these numbers are not final. We still need to talk to the heads of the enterprise and revolving funds, as well as the town departments as well, to make sure that these numbers are more aligned with what's actually happening.
Okay, but
So-
even regardless, okay,
Yeah.
even if the number went down,
Right.
we're charging out $4.2 million of spending, and I'm wondering, these receiving organizations, what's available to them to make sure that these monies are being spent efficiently? Do you understand my question?
Well, I thought I understood the first question, and how do they manage this? They manage it through their fees. And I will
Right.
make the comment,
Right.
having been with the town for 10 years, I know there has consciously been an effort to minimize what is charged to Beatty and Recreation, to not charge them for the full cost. So this is the full cost
Gotcha.
according to the methodology that we're using. So was your second question? Your second question
Yeah, it's a little bit different than that. I understand that we're really now getting more accurate on what services we're providing for them, and I think that's good news. But I guess what I'm saying is, when you're in charge of your own costs, you can kind of manage the efficiencies. Whereas, do they have any control over any efficiencies behind these activities?
No, I think that rests with me and with the finance team.
Okay.
These are the costs. This is what it costs to provide the services that the general fund provides on behalf of these enterprise funds.
So I might kind of just weigh into your question, Mary, I think, which is, so if I look at, let's keep BD as an example. Let's look at human resources as an example. Hey, it's $47,000. In my experience, in sort of a shared services model, you go back to BD, and they might say, well, what am I getting for that? And okay, here's what we're actually providing. And then it's a discussion to say, well, actually, maybe there's a way we can do that more efficiently. Or maybe I don't want that much service. Maybe I want less service. So actually, I don't need 10% of that person. I didn't even realize I was doing, but let's talk about that, and maybe we can reduce it, right? Maybe there's a way. Show me the list of what they're doing. Oh, actually, 3 of those things I could do myself. I actually don't want that anymore. I mean, it's just an example, right?
Yeah.
But you have to have that sort of contract, that handshake, right, between the shared services and the entity that's getting it.
So you do?
Yes. So I would say those conversations are ongoing, and the intent moving forward would be at the beginning of the budget process, as I talked to the finance staff about, would be to have a schedule of fees that are being charged to the funds with signatures town manager and the manager of the enterprise fund so that there was an understanding of what the costs are. Just with the HR costs associated with BD or recreation, because I understand those jump out, we have a significant seasonal employee
Right.
population, so
I
the
know.
demand on HR related to that is heavy.
Right, but somebody might say, I actually need more of that, you know?
Yeah.
Can you,
Right.
you know, hey, here's where I need support, right?
Yeah.
I'm not questioning if it's equitable. I guess what I'm just thinking about is how is it managed?
Yeah.
And is it
Right.
managed by the people who get it or the people who send the charge?
Yeah.
You know?
Both.
The risk of asking the same question again, trying to understand that total. So this is the total of that's charged back to these enterprise or revolving funds. But this is not the total of all the indirect charges in the town. Is that correct?
It is,
These are just the ones that are providing services to those.
This is what we refer to as indirect. So when we're talking about indirects, it's this.
So this is, all those indirect charges are being charged back to these funds.
Yes.
What about indirect services to other departments and other entities other than these enterprise or revolving funds? Those are absorbed here?
So for general fund, for departments that are solely operating inside of the general fund, we don't do this. We might do this analysis to determine how we're allocating budget, but we don't charge directly back. So the fire department, because I'm looking at the fire department. Maybe that's not even good because we have an ambulance revolving fund. The police department. So the police department operates solely within the general fund. We are not allocating to the police department the cost of health insurance for employees or the cost to provide payroll to the police department. Is that what you're
Yeah, I'm
getting?
just trying to understand of the total indirect costs, whether they're allocated here or general fund. What percentage am I seeing in the 4.2 million? Is that 10% of all of the indirect costs, 50% versus the general fund? Maybe I'm not being clear.
No,
Just trying to
I understand what you're saying.
That total represents.
I can't answer that off the top of my head.
Okay.
We certainly can take a note and get back on that.
Okay.
Another fairly simple way to think about it is these enterprises are the organizations that are actually providing services for additional, other revenue that's not coming out of the tax base directly.
Right.
And so the services that are fully funded by the tax base are also consuming some of these indirect services. They do use IT, they have accounting services and so forth. But because there's nothing other than the general tax levy to pay for those services, there's not really a need to directly charge it.
No, I understand the rationale, but
Okay.
I'm just trying to understand the
Okay.
buckets here.
All right.
This bucket versus the
Okay,
other.
I think if we've got a good general understanding, let's keep moving.
thank you.
Thank you.
I think one of the key takeaways is the increase based on the new methodology year over year is an additional $60,000
Yes.
will
Yep.
be charged back to enterprise and other funds.
Right.
And it's accurate now, which is important, that people reflect in their fees the true cost of services being provided.
And that's included in the 2.95% guideline spend, right? Got it.
Well, I would say no, because the 2.95% is budget increase, and this next slide will address
Right.
that. So we have not factored in additional revenue to offset the budget increase.
Okay.
So let's
Okay.
talk about
Okay.
that next.
Okay.
So just to sort of recap, and again, my thanks to Matt and Zach, they did great work on that project, and we'll continue to be moving forward with that. But in terms of where we are right now, 2.95%, or the dollar amounts, $34.7 million. Carrie had mentioned, too, some of the new revenue offsets that we are considering and that we see coming in. First is, I'll highlight the item on the bottom, which is about $60,000 in updated indirect charges. Will be, if after we meet with all the department heads, if that's the figure we end up with, that'll be an additional $60,000. The community development updated fee schedules that is taking place, I believe, effective as of
January.
January 1. Thank you. We are estimating that it'd be roughly to a rough tune of about $200,000 more in new fees. We also, moving our way up, we also have the ambulance fund, which currently has a balance just over $1 million. Would be, if you remember from our capital presentation last night, that we're going to be utilizing the ambulance fund to purchase the newest ambulance in FY '27 and tapping that, as well as a few other larger scale components. I believe there's a CPR compression unit, as well as dispatch is also looking at and to purchase a medical dispatch component, so that when dispatch gets a call in on an emergency, that they will be prompted through this new piece of software and help them through. So these are all other opportunities that we see coming in, but are currently not part of our mix right now. But so, that was one of the pieces of emphasis that we've been receiving from the Finance Committee. We certainly heard that loud and clear last night, and want to be responsive to that, that the budget's made up of expenses, but it's also made up of revenues, and these are areas that we see providing for other offsets moving forward that'll provide some elements of relief.
That's not going to change the budget percentage increase.
No.
Well,
No.
so can you explain the community development, though, for 200K? So is that already factored in as an offset?
So right now, we basically have a fairly conservative perspective
Okay.
on it. So, yeah, so no, it isn't, because that's what we're anticipating.
Okay,
but
or the
we
60.
we
Okay.
also want to give it the time, just as we try to be conservative on the expense side, we try to be conservative as well on the revenue side. So we want to give it the chance to be able to open up a little bit, and well, to take its, to see if that actually materializes, at least in terms of what our projections should be.
So for former Finance Committee members.
Yeah. Yeah.
You will recall the model that we used to use to project property tax increase, and the guideline that the Finance Committee would set in years past was driven on the impact to property taxes. And additional revenues, new revenues coming in, would be factored into that process. So you'd have kind of a gross increase and a net increase. As we understand the Finance Committee guideline at 2.5%, that's budget growth. That's not factoring in any additional revenues generated. And so while we're at 2.95% right now, we are proposing additional revenues, new revenues that will soften that increase. And we, I think when we come to you next month with the final proposal, we will have that full gross and that full net. But I guess we're hoping the Select Board will take into account in your calculus that there are some offsetting revenues to support the fiscal '27 general fund budget.
So changing gears a little bit, we also, a little bit of our focus this year has been looking at public safety and seeing how we compare to comparable communities. So this information was put together by Matt from Kerry's staff, and looking at what, for both police and for fire, what we look like how we look like comparably for per 1,000 residents. So you can see on for the police side of things, we are roughly in keeping, a little bit on the higher side of where we are to our comparable communities. Moving forward on the firefighter side, we are on the top end of that for benchmarks. Again, these are the things that we're hearing back from the Finance Committee and the Select Board, wanted to show you this and seeing where we fall in. But one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that we also have to look at, if we're trying to make comparisons to communities, what are the things that potentially makes Concord unique? So when we look at this, there are certain things to point out of where we end up on the higher end. So we have 3 nursing homes, which draw a lot of calls, especially for the fire and EMT. Medical offices, we're the highest among our peer community at 5. So someone who's going in for what they think is a simple procedure, it turns into an emergency. So with 5 medical offices, that does potentially raise that. Private schools, we have, we have 6 private schools and 3 with dorms. So again, compared to our other communities, it's something that makes us unique. And finally, the last thing that we have, the only other community we're really pointing to here that is Lexington, is a tourism part of things. So that also brings a lot of people, especially with Walden Pond and full. You can draw a lot of people, and of course, all of that police control and emergencies that can come up with that, and medical needs that do come up with it, is a regular stress on the public safety side of things. So,
Can I just ask a question about the private schools? So what are the nature of those calls, and are they more frequent? I mean, we have staff supporting our current schools, our town schools, but not the private schools, so I'm just kind of curious to.
Chief, you want to speak to this?
I'd have to look at the exact breakdown of it,
Oh.
Please.
We'll have a seat. Oh, thank you. I couldn't tell you the exact breakdown, but the private schools will respond to any variety of issues,
Yeah.
including medical emergencies that do happen there, fire alarms, occasional small other incidents, carbon monoxide detector,
Yeah.
odors of gas. So there is a broad array of impact, but I don't know the exact breakdown
Yeah.
off the top of my head.
I was just
What
trying to
the
figure out
private
what made it distinct. So, CO2 detectors, that could be in any building,
Correct,
right? I
yeah.
just didn't know what made the
I-
private schools different. And part of my question is, we do an awful lot of support. Private schools are nonprofit in this community too. So understanding all the services that we provide is going to be particularly important for us as a select board.
Our inclusion of those amongst a number of other things
Yeah.
were, and some of this dates back to the 2012, 2013 EMS strategic plan. We worked with that with a consultant, and it was identifying some of the population, the infrastructure, the service population outside of the regular population. So the dormitories at those schools, they act like population. It's except for the summer off season. It's a 24/7 residency, but they don't show up in population. But there is a demand, and it was just a method of identifying additional demands that. Even though that one's much more similar to residences,
Yep.
It doesn't show up when you do a
Yeah,
comparison of
that's a good
population.
point. Good point. Yeah.
So if we included the resident
Students,
population
yeah.
of the schools, how would that affect the sort of staffing per 1,000 residents number? Do we know approximately how many resident students there are?
Honestly, I'm not sure that would have a material impact, because our population, the population number we use now is from the last census, and that includes the prison population.
Yeah.
And so I think,
Okay.
I don't think it would be different. I will say, what we're talking about right now obviously highlights the need to advance the pilot
Yep.
conversation, and,
Yeah.
You knew we were
The
going there.
point-
All right.
No, point well taken, and we do know that other communities that have private schools, there are a few of them that have, that are making regular pilot payments, and they're sizable.
Well, that's a key potential revenue source.
Right,
that
of course.
was Not included before, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That would be good.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
just some other components that make us unique. Geography, we've got Route 2 that divides the community, which draws in a lot of calls from police and fire. We have the MBTA commuter rail, multiple rivers. It's also physically one of the larger communities in square miles based upon our comps, with Andover being the largest among our benchmark towns. So a lot of miles to have to cover. We also have special populations. We talked a little bit about this. We've got public schools, private institutions, senior housing, and assisted living facilities, as well as tourism sites with Minuteman National Park and Walden Pond, which are big draws on our resources. So again, these are some of those unique factors. And finally, the last piece is events. We have a number of seasonal events and special events throughout the year. We've got strong civic participation, parades, historical commemorations. The 250th is an example of that. So again, that requires a lot of police and fire support planning. Again, what makes us different than maybe some of our other comparable
I
communities.
have a question for the chief. Of the towns we were looking at there, which ones have multiple firehouses? And, I assume all of the large ones.
I'd have to go
Probably.
back and look at most of them do. I'd have to look at the list to remind myself. Acton has 3. I'm honestly not overly familiar with Andover. That's a newer comparison, which is why we don't have any numbers in there yet from a previous chart. Bedford has 1. Belmont, I believe, has 2 or 3? 2. Yeah, Lexington has 2, Sudbury has 3. Acton is staffing 3 stations right now. If anybody's aware, they had 4. They did build a 4th station, did a trial. From what I understand, it wasn't feasible to try to staff all 4 stations, staffing, and they've reverted back to a 3-station model.
Do these communities also generally match each other in terms of their use of overtime or planned overtime in terms of how they staff and what they expect to consume in any given year?
That, I don't know what their staffing model and their overtime usage is. I could try to find out and again, get back to you on that, but I don't know what their staffing model is with full-time personnel versus use of overtime to reach their daily staffing needs.
Okay.
In terms of the budget, we talked a little bit about this earlier. So after a conversation with the police chief, fire chief, dispatch director, so we talked a little bit more about how best to support the police department. And you'd seen in earlier slides the proposal or earlier proposals about bringing potentially on a deputy police chief. And so now that's transitioning such that what we came up with and where we're going to be focusing our resources on is the proposal for a new public safety business manager, which again is going to help police, fire, and dispatch for the upcoming year. So I think that the kind of takeaway in terms of looking at some of these benchmarks is that it's going to require further work. Carrie and our team have talked to you about priority-based budgeting. We are beginning that stage. We've got we're working to look at a piece of software that attaches to our budgeting our budgeting software, Munis. Going to be doing that on the 19th and looking at that and seeing that might be a good fit. But really looking at priority-based budgeting and teeing that up for the next fiscal year, because we're starting this a little late in our process, but really trying to make that more of a focus for us moving forward.
So, Cameron, earlier you had asked about the $40,000. We do not have a crosswalk spreadsheet included in this presentation. We can share that with the.
Want to try to show?
Do we?
Staffing, we can actually, I can
Okay.
unshare if we want to show that.
Because I had the same question as well. That it,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Jennifer actually has this, she's going to share, so if we can make sure that Jennifer has access to this. While we had that little break, I asked Jennifer if she had that up to show, and
So
she's going to do that.
Do we have that teed up, or do you want to
Yep,
talk
that's
about
here.
dispatch?
Yep,
Oh,
here
okay.
it is. So this is the question, how we got to the 40,000.
Yeah, I can't see
We're
that.
rounding up. So where we were from the earlier version to this version, the ads are, if you note, it's record support. It's not necessarily an FTE. We talked about that. We're bringing back in the library overtime
Yeah, that was-
and that's primarily to provide those services on Sundays. The PS, Public Safety Business Manager, is also being added, and we talked about that. And the patrol officer, this was something that we were looking, when we were talking about trying to bring in the deputy police chief, there was a mix of we had a vacant patrol officer, we're looking to potentially maybe keep that empty, but in this case, we said, well, if we're moving toward the public safety business manager, we're going to have to bring that back. So those are those are our adds, and the removals are the removal of the deputy police chief at about 166,000. We're removing the IT knowledge manager at 113,000, and as we discussed earlier, that ranger position, the part-time ranger position, which had been, I think, in the FY25 budget, removed in the FY26 budget. Proposal was to bring that back, and we are saying no to that here. That's how it nets out to the 40,000. So those are all, again, changes that, you know, we've since the last iteration of the budget you've seen.
Kerry, the benchmarking that you've done is great. This is really useful. Have you done benchmarking in other departments, or are you in the process of doing that?
So we're just about complete with HR, and we picked that because there was a lot of conversation about HR last year. I don't know if we can pull that up. I know Matt is working on Public Works, and that's the next one on deck, and then
Great.
and then we'll continue through the process. Do you want us to pull up HR or?
I think I may have pulled that
If you
one.
had,
Yeah.
that might be
Yeah.
interesting.
So, yeah, I don't think we have that one.
You don't-
Carrie. We pulled that from it, so, but that was one of the benchmarks
Yeah.
that we did.
So we can share that. The interesting thing there is we really were, I think, well-positioned among our peers, and I know we received feedback from various places that people thought that we were high, but when we actually looked at this same peer group, we were very close, and we were below national standards as well. But we can share that. We had it in one version, and we pulled it out because we weren't necessarily talking
So-
about that.
Sorry, can we go back to the head count thing? I just want to make sure that
The spreadsheet?
well, so
Okay.
So that says we were going to, the original presentation was to have flat head count, I guess, going back
No.
in November?
No,
No.
Okay,
adding
No.
4.
okay, because we've taken out 2 people, deputy police chief and an IT knowledge manager, yeah? But we've. Correct.
Right.
Yep. We've taken out 2 that were in the proposed budget.
Right.
Yep.
And the ranger.
Well, I mean, the iteration
Rangers,
of it, we haven't,
Earlier,
We've taken out 2 that were in the last meeting in the proposed
right,
budget.
right,
Yeah.
correct.
But we've added back in 2 people that were not in the proposed budget.
Yeah, no, they were in there, the deputy.
Well, we're saying that this is a net, these are the changes.
Oh, this is the new.
Yeah.
I was
These are the
thinking
changes, right?
comparison
So
to
we
November.
added and we
last
removed.
iteration.
Okay, so since the last iteration, we took out 2 roles and we added 2 roles, which is 0.
took out 3 roles.
Okay. And we're saying headcount is flat. So does that means by definition that what was presented last month was no increase in headcount? But I kind of thought there was a proposed
It
increase
was
in
an
headcount.
increase because
Right.
we only removed one position. The risk and compliance was removed to add, and we were up at, actually, it was adding 3.5
Right.
minus 1, so we were actually up 2.5. But with the adjustments that we ran through up above on this spreadsheet, there's various different scenarios. We also had removed a police officer in order to make that down to 1.5 increase. So we had to restore the police officer because we were not adding command staff in the police department. So we kept the staffing of sworn officers the same and added just the business manager.
So technically,
So we
it's
took
one
out-
new FTE.
So we're at our whatever headcount today. We're taking out a risk management
Yeah.
role?
Yes.
So, yeah, that's currently in the FY26 budget, there is a risk manager position that's currently vacant, and then we're proposing not to replace that position. Those responsibilities have been reallocated to other staff, myself included.
Okay. And then basically, we're just adding back in a business manager.
Yeah, so I think it's the difference between looking at where we are now with 27 versus 26 versus where we were
Right.
27 versus earlier versions of 27.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to see the HR benchmarking?
Yeah, if you have that, you want
Just have a question.
to put that up.
On the police, so talk about pulling out the deputy police chief and adding an officer. I mean, head counts are the same, but the functions are
Businessman.
different. So I'm just trying to understand how that jives.
In terms of,
Well, it's no change from what it is today.
it's no change in the head count. So currently,
Yeah.
what we have for staffing is we have a police chief, a police captain, and 2 police lieutenants. What this would do is add another position in the command staff and take away a position from the line staff. That's all it is. The
That's
total
what it is,
count
okay.
doesn't change at all. It still stays at 36. We're just increasing a body up above to provide more supervision to the staff.
Got it. Thank you.
So,
Do you-
What do
We
you
have the
want to
age-
see in this?
oh, the next table, right, yeah.
think that
so,
one's easier.
The next table in terms of the positions. So Carrie, I don't know if you wanted to speak.
Can you
to
make
the-
it bigger at all?
Yeah, so this is,
Very,
Second?
Yep, it's good.
this is HR authorized positions. For our peer community, we have total full-time equivalents, total authorized positions, and the ratio. And so you can see the national, well, I guess the statewide benchmark and the national benchmark versus our 1.66 employee ratio. Our cost per employee is higher, but I think we need to dig into that further because I think that cost per ratio probably includes software expense and other expenses, and I'm not necessarily sure that's apples to apples, but at least from a ratio of HR FTE to total employee FTE, we are well within our benchmark group, our peer community
Yeah.
group.
All right. Bring this back.
Are we at dispatch
We are at
now?
dispatch.
So the next thing that we wanted to talk to you about, kind of, where we are, where we're going, an opportunity that we're looking at. For some of you who have been on the select board for a bit, we had looked at regional dispatch with the town of Acton. That did not end up coming to fruition. I think we probably rushed through that process a bit faster than we should. We continue to look at regional opportunities, but we do see, and we understand that that's a process. That is going to take time. But we do see an opportunity to potentially offer what would be hosted dispatch services. And I wanted to have Stephen Johnson, our emergency communications manager, just talk to you about that, what that looks like, and what we might be able to expect from being able to offer that service.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be before you for my first time. It's been a year with the town. It's been a pleasure. Good to meet you all. So State 911 has kind of not, it's not quite a mandate, but the picture, if you were to look at all the 911 centers on a map, the map is gradually becoming less and less individual 911 centers, where every town has its own 911 center. More and more so that towns are working together to offer regional dispatch. And that's being highly incentivized with state 911 grants. And I would say the picture is changing a little bit, where the options as time goes on, years go by, the options are going to get smaller and smaller for us to choose from. And so there's 2 models the state has put forward that they accept. There's called the hosted model and the district model. The district model essentially is towns get together, make an agreement, form a district, and then that district operates independently with representation from each town. Then there's the hosted model, where the dispatchers and all the staff become employees of the town through the hosting town, through agreement with the other municipalities, and utilize the resources offered by that town. So in a district model, you're going to have to figure out whose human resources you're using. In a hosted model, it would be, say, Concord's human resources. So there's some efficiencies there, some cost savings there, enhancements to public safeties that exists. Streamlining of mutual aid coordination. If I actually go back a slide, Ryan, I'm kind of doing this a little bit out of order, but thank you. So this would improve long-term service reliability, resiliency, our staffing sustainability. It allows us to have more consistent operations in the region. We are much more impenetrable to staffing shortages, things of that nature, and it aligns with Massachusetts State 911's priorities moving forward. Lets us be at the forefront of something that's already happening rather than having less options and the fiscal picture becoming more restrictive as time goes on. And the funding opportunities for that to happen, of course, this comes at a cost. Well, how are those things financed and funded? State 911 provides substantial grant funding. It's highly incentivized. There's funding that exists for transition costs, studies of feasibility, implementation. Really, they do fund the majority of it, if not all of it, along the way until the towns are able to reach agreement on how they'll be self-sustaining moving forward. And we're beginning this conversation now. Carrie, the police chief, the fire chief, and I are having this conversation to say, as this map is becoming smaller, options narrowing in the future, we want to begin having these conversations now. What does this look like? And that looks like identifying potential partners, those who are willing. You know, sometimes I make the joke that it's like going to a dance. If you don't have a dance partner, then maybe you shouldn't go to the dance, right? But if we have a dance partner, somebody who's interested and would sees this as something that would be beneficial to their municipality as well, identify those potential partners, and then look at some feasibility studies, that would be in consultation with State 911, who would fund those studies. We'd have to have some agreements in place. But that's a little bit cart before the horse. We're just having these conversations and identifying what the future could look like.
Did you, I'm not sure if I missed it, but right now we think there's a fairly, well, I don't want to overstate, but we think there's interest in the town of Concord providing some shared regional dispatch services based on our initial conversations with our neighbors. I'm wondering if you could just talk just a little bit about what the shared service looks like, maybe what a potential timetable would be. Not to put you on the spot, but this is something we would expect that potentially could advance much sooner, and there would be a financial benefit to the town of Concord in order to be doing this with very little additional outlay in terms of expense.
Sure. So essentially what it would look like for us now, we have the staff. We're a little bit below where we need to be, but we're not talking about a large amount of staff coming on to take on, say, a neighboring community or two. I'd be hesitant to give numbers without having a study before you to support those, but we, based upon the call volume of some of our surrounding communities, we're not talking about a heavy lift with staffing. Currently, we would probably look at adding a dispatcher to each shift. That's my estimate, and then some supervision layers. But I would need to research that a little bit more thoroughly to have that as a confident number I could give you. Once those agreements are in place and the studies take place, we have with some work, we'd have within existing buildings now, we'd have the space to take on a community or two. And that would look like the assessments that those towns receive for us providing those services would have some financial benefit, reduce the cost of our overhead quite a bit. The incentive awards given to us by State 911 and their grants, we would receive priority line in grants for grant funding. Some of these grants are competitive, and being a center that's looking to solve the problem of a lot of, they're called PSAPs, public safety answering points. The rest of the country does this on county models, particularly, usually except for the large cities. Massachusetts, Connecticut's really a New England thing where we're still doing PSAPs in all these towns. There were over 200 911 centers in the Commonwealth. That's a lot of expense for the Commonwealth to support. So they're really incentivizing smart use of public safety resources, and that would be a cost savings for us. But beyond cost savings too, public safety is paramount. We want to do something that's both public safety wise and fiscally wise, right? We could save dollars, but if we put public safety at risk, then we're not really saving dollars. We'll have to have an issue somewhere else. This solves both challenges, if you will, because it, one, gives us a better collective mutual aid coordination, it gives us less staff increases, it decreases overtime. So there's a lot of those cost savings. That coupled along with the incentivization of the grants. And to your question about timetables, Carrie, again, this is a little bit cart before the horse. We have to identify who our partners would be, but this is something that could probably happen within a 2 to 3 year span. And I'm just kind of pulling that number off of conversations, my background experience, and the meetings we've had and conversations with State 911. But of course, there's a lot of factors along the way that could shorten or lengthen that number.
Yeah. So the only other thing that I would add to that, under the hosted service model, it's Town of Concord governance. So we are providing a contracted service, and I think the one of the issues that we were having with Acton is, even though that was a regional service, it really was feeling like a hosted service. The facility was likely to be in Acton, at part of the Acton Public Safety, and it didn't feel like it was shared governance. It felt like it was imposed governance. So under this model, it would be Town of Concord governance and contracted service available to some of our communities, neighboring communities that would be interested in that model.
So the main financial advantage would be, well, there's grants, and then there's cost sharing. I presume most of the advantages in the cost sharing.
Yes, those would be the two primary up front, but the efficiencies that exist therein will have longer term implications.
Right.
So, now when one employee goes out on injury leave, let's say, or a maternity leave or what have you, there's that overtime that's created, that's mandatory, that we fill now with a larger staff. We could talk about staffing minimums. There's just ways to be more efficient with your dollar spends. So yes, there's of course the grant funding that comes through that's sustained over a period of time. There's the assessments and the cost sharing that.
And there's the efficiency part.
And then there's the efficiency perspective.
Mary?
Thank you. Thank you. This is an exciting idea. I remember when we were talking about it with Acton, one of the benefits was that we would get some grants for technology upgrades as well, right? And that was very, very attractive. But what I'm thinking while you're talking about this is, as you know, the dispatch center at the public safety was underwater.
I know.
And then
Wait,
it was
It
moved.
wasn't underwater.
Well, it was.
It was.
It was
It was just
definitely
flooded.
wet
It
to
was just,
step in,
it
that's
was
for
just
sure.
flooded, right. And then it was moved to the third floor.
Yes.
And as you're also aware that we're in the process of looking at a new home for the public safety.
Sure.
So I'm right now curious about square footage that we would need if we became the host.
Sure.
So we don't want to do this now, but I would really think that we should get these conversations in front of the land use working group so that they keep that square footage in their requirements when they're looking at other sites.
Yeah, your point's
Okay.
well taken. and,
Okay,
yeah,
so
very good.
make that connection.
Understood. Yeah.
Great.
I think that's all for Steve
Yeah.
on that, and pretty much concludes the presentation.
Thank you.
So, I wanted to give some time to the select board to begin to, discuss the update we provided today and, where you're at. So,
Yeah.
put it back to you.
Well, I think the dispatch is really something that we should pursue. I know it's not an immediate FY '27, but something to consider strategically.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. And I see here that you have a handout for the IT business manager, sort of reinforcing all the value that that position.
Public safety.
This is the public safety, I'm sorry, not IT management.
Right.
I misspoke. And I assume this position would help with any sort of hosting and analytics with trying to put together a hosted model as well, obviously, that would be important.
So if we were to sort of step back and look at what the response to the Finance Committee is going to be, would you characterize this as a level services proposal? And have you actually thought about if the Finance Committee, for example, was not to move off of the 2.5, what are the options, or what kinds of things would be on the table if that had to be the number?
So I would characterize it as level services. There are some adjustments, but it is level services. We're not looking at closing the library or reducing shift strength in public safety or anything like that. For us to get to 2.5%, it's about another $160,000. We do have some additional opportunities that we're still working through. We're not going to stop working on the budget regardless of what happens here today or what happens with the Finance Committee on Thursday, but at some point we have to stop because we have to prepare a budget book and prepare for public hearings. I don't have anything specific to offer up just yet, other than we are still working on a number of things. We did just reach tentative agreement with our dispatch union, so we want to factor that into our projections for fiscal '27. Maybe we have a little bit of money that we could pull out of the salary reserve because we have that settlement. But I don't have anything for you teed up that's $160,000. That's not going to maintain level services. So we would be looking at service level reductions.
Carrie, if FinCom were to ask about efficiency initiatives, and maybe not this year, but in the future, one of them came up last night. We were talking about a snowplow.
Yep.
Operational, and there are a lot of those potential opportunities that maybe for staffing, sharing with the schools. I mean, if we consolidate, we'll have a lot more, but in the shorter term, what is your thinking about efficiency initiatives, either in staffing or outsourcing types of initiatives?
Yeah. So I do think there are a lot of potential opportunities with the school. I think those take time. They take time because we're operating out of separate buildings. Some of these things I think become easier if we're centralized. So if you're talking about finance and human resources and those types of things, I think they're just easier if the administrations are in the same building. I think that we have optimized our staffing levels. You can see from the head count that we have brought head count down. We've optimized for current service levels. If we need to go lower, we're talking about reductions in service levels.
I guess I'm asking, do we have to wait for consolidation to achieve the efficiencies? Can we start piloting those things now? I mean, clearly, there are large efficiencies, operational costs and headcount costs, but I'm just wondering.
So Jennifer and I have a meeting with superintendent and assistant superintendent next week. That is intended to be a regularly recurring meeting where we will, among other things, talk about shared services that we can pilot. My intention for next week is to come up with a couple of ideas of things that we can implement sooner rather than later. I don't know what those are just yet, but I'm hoping we can find some things.
I think calling them a pilot is very wise, because that's what we're trying it out, really.
Yeah.
It's new. No, thank you.
So
That's good
are there
news.
any opportunities with the Munis system? I know that we've probably experienced some efficiencies, but I know that from the audit perspective, there's a lot of data integration that has to happen, and I wonder if that's an opportunity with the schools in terms of just integration of financials. And
Yeah, I maybe I'll make a comment, then I'm happy to have somebody from finance as well. So we have invested a lot with Munis. We've been able to, in addition to our financials, we've brought payroll in at a savings to the town, and we are in the process of bringing our HCM in at a savings to the town. And I know one of the schedules we should put together for you is, we talked about $300,000 in line item cuts, and some of those the software savings are included there. Being able to have automated processes available to us through Munis is one of the reasons we were able to reduce headcount in HR. And I don't know, Ryan or Jennifer, if you have anything more you could talk about in terms of the benefits of Munis or other software.
I mean, I think that in terms of those weekly or those monthly meetings you're going to be having with the schools to talk to them about that is a potential opportunity to have them join. But ultimately, that's going to have to be up to the schools and their willingness to change systems.
The schools, they have a separate financial software suite that they use, but it is a Tyler Technologies product. Tyler is the parent company of Munis. There are communities that both town and school use Munis. Our interest would be that the schools would be willing to join us, and I think there would be, I'm not sure what they're paying for their software licensing, but I do think that there would be significant savings as a result of that. But it is a process. They use a different chart of accounts, which is necessary in order for them to maintain all of their required reporting to the state.
It's disruptive. Sure.
Mary?
I'd like to make a comment. We're talking now about the guideline, and as you pointed out, Carrie, the guideline is only one portion of the eventual impact on our tax bills, and it doesn't include incremental revenue that you found. But what I'm hearing from people that I'm talking to and listening to is that there's a lot of concern in town about the debt, the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 debt, and how that's going to impact our tax bills. So we talked about it last night, I know, but from phone calls I'm getting today and emails, I think it sounds like we're doing a good job at the guideline, especially if we move to shared services. But I think a closer look at debt moving forward is something we have to take seriously.
So just so you know, the financial policy work group is starting to look at debt
Very good.
as well. Yes,
Very
that's our
good,
next
because
step.
I think that has a bigger impact on the eventual tax bill than some of the things maybe we're talking about here.
Just to be clear, Tier 1's not a debt.
Cash, yeah.
Cash,
But-
but, okay,
Yeah.
but Tier 2.
Capital, yeah.
It's really Tier 2
Well,
capital
and 3.
within the levy that people are concerned about. Because we don't have Tier 3, well, we will, but whole separate question. My point is that the Tier 1, which is not debt, I understand, and the Tier 2 is something that people are concerned about.
Yeah.
We did get some feedback, actually, from Sandy on some opportunities for potential ways to look at debt and reduce debt, which I can share, but that, I don't want to speak to it here, but it does involve looking at how we finance our debt.
So it's a financial engineering approach.
Yeah, and I think it's worth taking it offline.
Okay, good.
Very detailed.
Thank you. I just
But-
wanted to make that comment.
When we think about the process, and I know how much work it is to get to this point, so again, I want to thank the staff because, we come in at the end and have our ideas, but you guys have been working with us. When you rewind to the beginning of this and you think about the basic inflation driver for the budget year to year, had nothing been done to optimize, what would we have been looking at as sort of, how much would this budget have inflated if you just essentially let the costs run from 26 to 27? And so that we can have a sense, and I think it's important to give the Finance Committee a sense of what's been accomplished.
So I think, Mark, where we started the budget process with everything that was submitted, it was roughly about 5.3%.
Yeah.
So there've been a number of changes to get down to what was 3.25 and a little bit more work to get to the 2.95. So it's similar to what we said with the capital last night. I think it was the Tier 1 capital was about $1 million more than the figure we're at right now. So we're continually, I mean, that's part of those processes that, the board doesn't necessarily see, but we are, that between Kerry, finance team, and our department heads working on a regular basis to reduce those figures.
That 5.3% included the deputy police chief and the IT knowledge manager also,
Right,
so it's not,
Right.
yeah.
But it had some growth
Yeah.
incorporated into it.
Mhm.
And that's helpful. So, there has been work done. And what is the assumption for cost of living increase in the salary plan in in this budget?
Good question.
That was in the last presentation.
Yeah, so it's different based on different groups because union employees have a collective bargaining agreement for 3 years. We have a table put together wasn't included in this presentation. We can include it next time. But for non-union employees, we have a plus 1.2% for COLA. There's a 2% step for employees that are moving through steps and the 1.2% COLA.
Okay. So just to play that back for the folks that might be listening, that would mean that an employee who is not a top step might expect 3.2%.
Is eligible for 3.2% base adjustment, and that's based on the 12-month CPIU for this region.
Pretty consistent with today's numbers.
Using slightly related but different benchmarks, the national inflation estimate is about 3%.
Yeah.
So you've hit 2.9%, you're kind of matching inflation.
I think that's consistent with the figure that was introduced by Don at the last finance committee.
Yeah, and then they chose not to adopt it.
He did that.
Well, I mean, that's
Which held
essentially-
sway for a while.
So
Yeah.
it's,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
as opposed to the budgeting process where you started with I'll call it the bottoms up, and then you applied the brakes and looked at service levels, so, but you ended up at about, national inflation rate.
yeah. It also suggests that if the overall increase is less than that, then what the overall effect of that is prioritizing paying employees while trying to gain as much efficiency in the non-salary portions of the budget as possible, because this is coming in at 2.95, which is less than that.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts, right? So I'm not sure I understand kind of Carrie, you mentioned Munis took $300,000 out, right, that we spent. So where is that reflected?
I don't think that, please.
Yeah, no, in total, we reduced line items by $300,000.
Right. So shouldn't your starting point for this next year's budget incorporate that $300,000 of savings?
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
Sorry, but so if you started from last year and then you took out 300,000, right, you're actually looking at something that's an even higher increase.
No, I think the 5.3% is.
Yeah, but the 5.3 to me is, with all due respect, is kind of irrelevant, right? Because to Mark's point, if you didn't do anything, that's different from somebody submitted a budget asking for more supplies or more headcount. I mean, I could submit a budget asking for a 50% increase and then knock it down and say, hey, look, I took all this cost out, right? If you said, hey, I'm starting with what I have last year, and I'm 300,000 to the good, because I took this out because of all this, one-time Munis expense, that would be my starting baseline. And then I could say, okay, if I didn't do anything, what does that cost look like, in the next year? Which the only thing that would change is, hey, I've got some, raises that I have to give, or some, some increases in supplies, kind of thing.
And I think what Carrie's saying, that there was a portion of that was from Munis, but there were other things that we were
Right.
going through line item by line item.
Yeah.
Cameron, that we would remove from the budget and try to better reflect what our actual spending rates have been. And so, that I think that's what that savings reflects, not just the.
But I guess I'm having a hard time seeing where efficiencies are baked into this plan and what it is that actually is being done to manage more efficiently. I think, Mayor, I've heard, you mentioned before too as well, like, how do we get efficiencies every year, right? And I guess I'm having trouble seeing where those are. So if there's 300,000 that we don't need to spend this year, how is that showing up in lower budgets? If there are things that we're doing to drive efficiencies or take out costs, those should be things that are offsetting and bringing the budget down.
Well, I think the other thing to keep in mind too, in terms of what different departments are doing. There's a lot of, there's different initiatives that when you see the final budget document, that'll talk about the narratives and different initiatives that those departments are taking. With the inflation being what it is, 3% is the average, but you have other pieces that are higher, and so what you're
And some
seeing-
pieces that are lower.
Yeah, maybe. So to some extent, it's incorporating some of those efficiencies to keep things within range too. So, and again, that varies from department to department in terms of ways in what they're doing. But that's, so that's something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think, it's hard without sharing the actual spreadsheets, which we're happy to do. So personnel costs, while I'm talking about non-union costs, personnel costs vary by employee group. Our public safety unions in particular, they have very few steps. So when they're hired, police officer, 5 or 6 steps off the top of my head. Those steps are average about 5%. So in their first 5 years in employment with the town, their salary, that personnel expense is increasing at a much higher rate than other employee groups. And then they top out. At this point in time, in our police department in particular, I don't know the percentage, but most of our employees, because we have a newer, younger department, they are moving through steps. They are not at top steps. So personnel expense related to the police department in particular, a little bit less so in the fire department, they are much higher than the overall budget increase. So that is absorbing. We had to make those different cuts in order to be able to meet a budget that is approaching the Finance Committee guideline.
Yeah, see, basically, you're taking out 300,000 from Munis, but you have salary pools. You have a balance there, and you're still hitting a basic inflation number,
Yeah.
which I think, it's not easy to do.
And
So it's not, you're not just taking out 300,000 and no other cost increase. You do have salary increases. And I don't know what your total salary pool is. Do you have what your raise pool is?
Yeah, I mean, do you know?
Sense what that is?
Not offhand, right? But no, not offhand.
Yeah.
No. But it's the heavier part.
It's
of
6
the
figures.
budget.
Right.
Yeah. So with salary is really a primary driver of a lot of
Right.
of what
Right.
we're doing.
At level head count, you have salary. Well,
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Do we have more questions from the committee?
Well, I guess the only other question I would have is that you talked about some other software and you're still digging. Is that something that we'd get an update on the 22nd? Or is that too soon?
The 27th.
Our next.
19th
Your
with
19th, yeah.
the rep from Tyler to look at the priority-based budgeting.
Maybe under the town manager's report, I'd be able to offer something. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
how much.
One more question. What is the plan for implementation of our favorite pilot program? What is the current sense going forward?
Maybe we should put that on an agenda for a future.
Excuse me?
I think maybe we should put it on a future select board
Okay.
agenda, so we can just put
Because it came up during the conversation.
Yeah, I
it
would,
would come up in every meeting, right?
from my perspective, it's a priority for the second half of the fiscal year, so.
Okay.
I'm really happy to hear that you're meeting regularly to talk about shared services. I think that's between the schools and the town, I think that's the most promising area to get some productivity savings. When I worked in corporate, we realized that over the years, as you're responding to requests, you just kind of grow and you don't have, so we would bring in professional consultants to do a re-engineering or a streamlining of our processes. We didn't have time or the money to do that. So I don't think it's realistic to think we have the time or the money to do that here, especially now, given that we've got so many other MCI land use, other big, but, so I think doing something with the shared services to me sounds promising, but I'd like to not lose track of the fact that if we consolidate offices, there might be an opportunity to kind of re-engineer some of our processes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I would really want to encourage us getting to the 2.5%. We're $156,000 away. And, you know, you're seeing a lot of, obviously, cost pressures. You can read about it on different towns across the state. I believe the city of Boston is asking their departments to come up with 2% reductions, right, for next year's budget. So, you know, to me, 2.5%, I think, is very reasonable to be able to push and find another $156,000, particularly when you talk about, you know, again, something like Munis that took $300,000 out. And I guess I'm still trying to understand the kind of culture of sort of always kind of defending, here's why we spend what we spend, right? So we show benchmarks. It says the police is the second highest. It says the fire is the highest by far. It says the HR has the highest spend per employee. And yet, we're not bringing specific opportunities to bear. We're more sort of saying, hey, here's some reasons why we're going to kind of defend us being, you know, 20, 30% higher. And I'm just not clear on sort of why it is that we are sort of like, hey, we just want to defend this stuff rather than say, wow, maybe there are opportunities. Let's get after some of this. Let's, you know, look at how we can, you know, reduce these expenses. Because I think we're going to be faced with a lot of cost pressures going forward, a lot of capital cost pressures, a lot of investments that we want to make, and no different from us managing our own personal budgets. I mean, if we see a big expense coming on the horizon, we go, all right, how can we put some money away? Because we know, how can we save some money today? Because we know we're going to have to spend more in the future. So those are some of my thoughts.
Can I just mention again, the $300,000, that's total line item savings, and it's not 100% Munis or even largely Munis. I just,
Yeah, okay.
No, I just,
Thank you.
You have said that.
it's been, no, but it's been said a couple of times,
Yes.
and I think
Yep.
that's important.
Also, in terms of other revenues, we, at this stage of the game, we're usually working with an assumption about what the state aid picture is going to be, what the other revenues are going to be. What are the risks that you see, or the possible opportunities in the aid picture and other revenues that might affect this either to the good or to the bad?
What do you say you want to?
So the governor's budget comes out the end of January. Do we know, has the legislature had the consensus revenue hearing? I don't think they've done that yet, so we have not yet heard anything from the state. I would assume before Christmas we will hear what the state is projecting for revenues, and then we'll start hearing what the governor is projecting. To be perfectly honest, we receive so little aid from the state. The state aid is not a huge concern. The potential for 9C cuts, which are mid-year cuts, the governor I believe has the authority this year to implement if she needs. So that those are that is a power that the legislate. No, that they does it come from the
governor
from the governor to make cuts mid-year to the state budget, including local aid. So it's that's more of a potential concern, but we have not heard anything on that yet.
And I think the other number that often gets discussed alongside of the guideline is what the free cash allocation is going to be and what the status of free cash is.
Yeah.
You know, Wendy, I'm looking at you.
I'm going to turn it right over to Ryan.
So how are we doing with?
And
We're
Jennifer,
still in
right.
the process of finalizing that. We just, we have our weekly finance department meeting today, and so we're continuing to work on that. And ideally, I don't want to make any promises, but we're hoping to have something by the end of the year to share.
Okay.
That would be certified free cash as of the end of last fiscal year.
Yeah,
Yes.
So, and by the end of the year, you meant by December?
Calendar.
December,
right.
yeah.
Calendar year.
Yeah.
So we'll
Thank you.
know.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll know.
We don't want it to be the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
That would be
Yeah,
a problem.
that would
Right.
we've tried that before. and it didn't work
It's
out
not
quite
anything
so
we want
well.
to aspire to.
Okay.
That's fair enough.
And then the only other question I had about revenues was the local there was legislation that was potentially allowing us to increase local taxes, but I don't know what happened to that. Did it get out of the legislature?
My understanding is that was initially proposed maybe 2 cycles ago. I
Yeah,
think it's
but I
still
thought it
being
came back.
discussed, but
Yep.
I also haven't seen much,
Yeah.
you know, I haven't seen much support from the legislature in terms
Yeah.
of, because it is the governor's proposal. Carrie, I don't know if you've heard anything.
The, well, the Municipal Empowerment
Yeah,
Act, there was
That's it.
something today that I'm,
That's right, I got
Yeah.
that too.
Mhm.
Here we go, from MMA.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but in terms of local receipts, how close
Are we
to
looking?
current are we at understanding what the local receipt picture has been? I know that there was a lot of hope that maybe the 250th celebration was going to yield some additional local receipts for the community. Do we have that?
For the
Any
current
visibility
fiscal
to that?
year.
Yeah.
Yes, so we did we haven't really looked that deeply into FY '20, the current fiscal year, because we've been so focused on trying to get the next year's budget, but we have, we can share the actuals in FY '25 with you, so to give you an update on that.
But when you put together all the different schedules for this, for the state, for the tax rate, we have to provide an accounting of local receipts, and
Yeah.
my recollection is there certainly weren't any issues of concern in
No.
terms of meeting our current year
Yeah.
targets. In terms of what the 250th netted, the local excises, the meals tax, rooms tax, those are the things that can fluctuate based on what's happening in the community, but there's only a certain capacity, there's only
Exactly.
so many
Right.
hotel
Exactly.
rooms, so many
Yep.
restaurants, so the demand,
Yeah.
No, show
need
up
to
with
do
free
hotel.
cash.
Well, I'm thinking about the elements that should go into a final guideline
Yeah,
assumption set that we would then track through to town meeting to try and make sure that whatever the budgeted level, we can sort of refine that into what its actual impact is going to be. And if the model is based on, a year ago or more, that makes it a little bit more challenging to understand what the benefits might be. Okay.
What about fixed costs, like health insurance and things like that? How is that trending? Is that going up? My Medicare went up by 10%.
yeah, they're all going
So,
up.
in
Yeah,
our
diff-
conversations and
Yeah.
what you'd
That's
see, what you're going to see, at least for our projections, based upon our conversations with our Maya representatives, is about, we're looking at a 15% increase
Again.
for health insurance right now. So that process continues, where they'll give a preliminary, at that same MMA conference, at the MMA conference, they'll give a range. Last year was between 9% and 19%. The town came in at about 14%. But the primary reason we came in at 14% is that we were a new user, and that they just basically split the middle. So this year will be the first year that we're going to be based on our actual experience.
Okay.
And so again, the tentative conversation is that we'll be right at that same rate, so the pressure's.
14.
Yeah.
So that's what you budgeted for?
It's based on 15%, right?
15.
so the next meeting, the finance team and HR team has this afternoon is with our internal insurance advisory committee. Health insurance is something that is negotiated, and this is the next in a series of meetings with our representatives of our different employee groups to talk about cost savings measures on health insurance.
Okay. Thank you.
Carrie, you had previously broken down headcount into external facing versus internal facing.
Yeah.
Should we assume since the numbers are exactly the same, 252.58, does that break down from last year similar? Has that changed at all? Probably shouldn't change a lot.
There is one internal, the risk manager is internal
Right.
transferring. There's that one adjustment, which we will use that same template, budget presentation template, when we provide the final recommendation to you next month.
Yeah, I think it's very useful.
Yeah. So I know we're coming to an end of our time. We did hear Cameron's urge for us to get closer to 2.5. You know, we will continue to work. I'm wondering, is there, what the consensus of the board is, because I do feel strongly that to go below, we're talking about service level reduction. And we understand I think we have a good sense of which things are not tolerable. I'm not sure that we know necessarily where to go, but it would be helpful to get a sense, should that just be the target?
Can I ask one other question before we go there? The budgets are all assuming 100% staffing, correct?
Yes.
And what is your level of vacancy?
Yeah, Jess?
Because I'll just say from the corporate world, usually we're not allowed 100%. And usually what happens is you get forced a vacancy factor and you have to
Yeah.
sort of live with it. And that's one way to close a gap. So I'll just leave that as an
Yes.
option.
Yeah.
And I would offer that up as an option.
When we never
It's
expend.
risky, though, I'll just say, I know.
We
Yeah,
never,
but I agree with you, Wendy.
Yeah.
A small percentage, you take what your historical vacancy has been and you take half of it.
Or
and,
it's,
you
it's
know,
just applied,
Well, I mean.
0.5% off, whatever, yeah.
we
That's how we
never,
get free cash, right?
right, we never expend 100% of our budget appropriation, and most of the turnback comes from, fractions of vacancies
Right.
Yeah.
throughout the year.
Partial vacancy.
Just
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a reserve fund if we need it.
But so
yeah.
Carrie, when you say like a reduction in services, I mean, that sort of kind of scares people, right? Because people say, oh my gosh,
It
you're
is,
going to
yeah.
cut library hours, right? But like, for example, I mean, you could look at fire staffing, which is significantly higher, right? And looking at not what you do in the middle of the most busy day of the year, but like, what do we do in the off hours, right? And how are we backfilling, when people call in sick, or those, there are things that can be done that are, I guess, technically a reduction in service, but, if you look at the call data, which I haven't, and I don't know, I'm not an expert,
Yeah.
but if you look at it and say, hey, wait a second, at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, do we need this level of staffing? That's a different way of kind of deconstructing the problem than, just saying, hey, well, we're going to have to cut services, and it kind of gets everybody like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen?
I point well taken, and I think I am calling that a service level reduction. I feel strongly that it's important for people to know that we can't continue providing the same level of service if we're being given a guideline that is below inflation. And so we're not trying to unnecessarily alarm residents, but at the same time, I don't think it's prudent to let people believe that we can continue to provide the same level of service. So I think we're using, and we talked about this offline, and I do.
But optimization is a little bit different word from just, I'm cutting, I'm
Yeah.
trying to optimize it to the
Yeah.
demand and make sure that I'm managing it, so.
Yeah.
I'll present it a slightly different way. It's challenging to hit a number. I think between now and final, working hard to reduce, if you can, I think would go great. And part of it, my other ask, and you've heard it several times, if we can identify a couple of shared service opportunities, that'll help there, but it also start to jumpstart what's going to be really important in the years ahead. So that's not something
I think we need to continue to work on some of the strategic initiatives that we do work on, that we have been working on. When we look at the efficiencies that can be gained by doing things like municipal consolidation, so that then it's possible to actually drive utilization, especially in the non-public safety and emergency response services. I think that when we start talking about, short staffing, overnight shifts for particularly police and fire, we're frankly playing with fire. And that's a concern to me. But I do recognize that, and we've got some real work going on, when we have, 14 office buildings that need to be open 5 days a week, when many communities are doing that out of one or two or a half a dozen buildings, those are our real opportunities, because we can get back capital by disposing of those properties, that we can add housing or commercial, or to the commercial tax base by letting those properties become reused. And those are the real strategic
Yes.
differences. There are, the point of my questions earlier were there are risks that add up to much more than 0.5% of this budget that will go either to the good or to the bad in terms of being able to hit a target, that are going to materialize between now and town meeting when we're actually voting a number. So I, for one, feel like we're in a remarkably good place, and I want to commend particularly the new members of the finance staff for getting us here at this point in time, because it's a lift for a team that's really been on board less than 6 months, and in some cases significantly less than 6 months. So I'm quite comfortable saying that at this stage of the game, 2.95% is a number that will preserve the services and meet the expectations of the community, understanding that the work will still go on to try and absorb those things that come in ways that challenge our budget, like whatever the number turns out to be for medical plans or health insurance, and those things that may turn out to be positives, like grants or some other positioning in state aid. So for speaking for myself, I think that this is a good place to be in, and I think that, framing it in that way for the Finance Committee, I would say this is where we are. And while it's, it's a number that I think was recognizable, demonstrably below inflation for the most recent time frame, and frankly below my expectation for inflation for the coming year. We are talking about what we're expecting people to live on from July of next year through the following June.
Speaking for myself, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
But we're not done with budgeting yet.
Of course not.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so if we end up where we are,
Right.
I'd agree with you, but, let's keep going to see if we can even make it better.
Yeah,
If we can't, we can't, but.
Right. But, stated another way, I think that 2.5% is unnecessarily low, given the state of the community's finances and what I think are reasonable expectations for inflation. And it doesn't take very much for these conversations to have to fairly quickly go to either headcount or salary plan. And those things are challenging, because to the extent that we don't do those, we end up with turnover and attrition and recruiting issues, which take away from, which also have, costs to the management team and the departments that are involved. Anybody else want to weigh in? I know Carrie was looking for guidance. And we're not
I'm
going to
certainly
take a
in
vote.
support of at the 2.95, and would encourage us to keep looking where we can. If we can use a vacancy factor to get some of the costs down, great. But I agree that I think that you've dug already a lot into what you've got, and I don't want to cut any services beyond right now. I think that work's been done, but we should keep working on efficiencies for longer term, too.
Yeah, I agree. The 2.5 number was a good starting point to get us to look really closely at our spending, and I think you've done that. I think it's also started some good conversations about going forward. How can we make some efficiency gains? We've got to continue that conversation, just because if after this town meeting, we've got to, keep our eye on that ball. And I think we will, so I'm comfortable with the 2.95.
Or better.
Or better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
better
no,
if we can,
better's
for
good.
sure.
Higher's not.
And just to be clear, I'm not, and I'm comfortable with 2.5 and pushing to get there. And Mark, to your point on salaries, not to get there by changing anything on salaries. And in fact, I would sort of challenge if we were able to get below 2.5, that we should put a significant portion of anything we get below 2.5 towards increasing the COLA increases. So I totally would support, a gain share type of arrangement where we challenge the whole organization to say, if you can come back and find additional efficiencies, we'll absolutely put it back into the personnel and providing that as an incremental opportunity.
Again, thank you to the staff. Thank you to all of you that showed up. We hope our discussion was helpful to the folks online that listen to this as well. And appreciate the work, Carrie. And I, for one, like the opportunity to do this.
I think
with
this
the
is
staff
great.
president.
Very good,
I know I'm the most probably critical voice in the room of the select board, but I just do want to thank everyone. It's great that we're able to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, taking 2 hours to be able to do this is awesome.
It's
One last
probably
question.
a format we may want to.
When will we learn more about priority-based budgeting and just the methodology that we can work on together?
So we have a demo set up with our rep for end of next week.
19th, yeah.
And then we will make a decision whether or not we're going to work with them. There is a cost, obviously. It's a software tool, so we will have to find how to fund that as well. But if we decide that we want to move ahead, they are telling us within 3 months they can have this lined up for us. And I guess I would leave it to you to go online to see what they're, and I think, Paul, you said you did.
Yeah.
I don't want to say out loud what they're saying they're finding in savings, because it seems like a lot to me. And if we could find a percentage of what they're saying they're finding in other communities, it would be wonderful. But I think we would expect by the end of, certainly as we're planning for fiscal '28, that we would be using this tool and we would be doing the prep work for that probably in the fourth quarter of this fiscal year.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.